What happens when a legend walks into a luxury store and is judged by his appearance instead of his worth? How do you teach someone the value of respect without saying a word, just by letting your actions speak louder? What if the biggest sale of the year slipped right through a salesman's fingers, all because of his own arrogance? The glass doors of regal timepieces glided open, welcoming another customer into the world of luxury. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over glass cases filled with watches that cost more than most people's yearly salary. A few wealthy clients browsed the displays, speaking in hushed tones. The staff, dressed in sleek black suits, moved with careful precision, attending to their high-profile guests. This was not just a store. It was an experience, reserved for the elite. Then the atmosphere shifted. Through the entrance walked a tall figure, Snoop Dogg, clad in a loose gray hoodie, baggy jeans, white sneakers, and his signature shades. He strolled in with an effortless coolness. His presence commanded attention, yet he moved like he belonged anywhere he stepped. The store, however, didn't seem to agree. The first reaction wasn't admiration, it was judgment. A salesman at the counter, Michael, barely lifted his head before exchanging a smirk with his colleague. A few customers turned to glance at the unexpected visitor, their expressions ranging from curiosity to quiet disapproval. Snoop paused near a display of limited edition Rolexes, admiring the craftsmanship. He didn't rush. He wasn't here to prove anything, just to shop. But in places like these, shopping wasn't always so simple. A woman in a crisp navy dress, clearly a store manager, whispered something to Michael before retreating to the back office. Michael sighed, adjusting his tie, and made his way toward Snoop. His smile was thin, forced. "Sir," Michael said, voice dripping with fake politeness. "Can I help you?" Snoop glanced up from the display, taking in the salesman's rigid posture, the barely concealed skepticism in his eyes. "Yeah," Snoop said smoothly, his deep voice calm. "Looking for something nice today." Michael's eyes flickered toward the rapper's outfit, then back up to his face. "These watches," Michael gestured toward the Rolex case, "start at $50,000 and go well into the millions. We do have some more affordable options in the back if you'd like." Snoop chuckled, shaking his head slightly. He had seen this kind of thing before. "Nah, homie," he said, voice light but firm. "I came for the best you got." Michael hesitated, his smirk faltering. Before he could respond, the glass doors opened again. This time it was a wealthy businessman in a tailored navy suit. A platinum watch gleamed on his wrist as he entered, exuding an air of importance. The second Michael saw him, his entire demeanor changed. "Mr. Lancaster," Michael beamed, his tones suddenly dripping with enthusiasm. "Welcome back, sir. Your new Patek Philippe just arrived. Shall I bring it out for you?" The shift was blatant, immediate. Snoop watched in silence as Michael rushed off to cater to his real customer, completely dismissing him. The wealthy businessman barely spared Snoop a glance before following Michael toward the exclusive showroom. A few of the other customers chuckled quietly, murmuring to themselves. One woman in pearls whispered to her husband, "Why is he even here?" Snoop adjusted his sunglasses, exhaled slowly, and smiled to himself. He had all the time in the world. This was about to get interesting. Michael returned to the main showroom with an air of arrogance, his polished dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. The shift in his demeanor was obvious. Just minutes ago, he had brushed Snoop off like an afterthought. Now, after ensuring Mr. Lancaster was comfortably browsing, he finally turned his attention back to the casually dressed rapper standing near the Rolex display. Michael's smirk returned as he approached. "Sir," he said, voice laced with condescension, "are you sure you're in the right section?" Snoop slowly looked up from the case, his expression unreadable behind his signature shades. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Michael let out a light chuckle, shaking his head. "All right," he sighed dramatically as if humoring a child. "Let me just warn you. These watches start at $50,000. Some go for a few $100,000, even into the millions." He folded his arms. "Are you still interested?" Snoop's lips twitched into the faintest smirk. "Still standing here, ain't I?" Michael sighed again, feigning patience. "Of course," he said. "Well, we also have some more budget-friendly brands in the back. Something a little more accessible." Snoop let out a small chuckle. The arrogance was almost impressive. Before he could respond, another sales associate, Sarah, a younger woman with an eager but nervous expression, had been observing from behind the counter. She had recognized Snoop the moment he walked in, but had been too intimidated to approach. Now, seeing how Michael was treating him, She couldn't stay silent. She quickly stepped forward. Sir, Mr. Dogg, I'd be happy to show you. Michael cut her off instantly with a sharp glare. It's all right, Sarah, he said smoothly, holding up a hand to silence her. I got this. Sarah's face turned red as she hesitated. She knew what was happening was wrong, but she also knew Michael outranked her. Michael turned back to Snoop, clearly enjoying himself. You see, this store is known for catering to elite clientele, people who understand the value of fine craftsmanship, he said, emphasizing the word. We deal with serious buyers, people who… Snoop tilted his head slightly. People who look like Mr. Lancaster, huh? Michael froze for just half a second before recovering. He forced a smile. Of course not. We welcome everyone, but we do like to ensure our clients are a good fit. A few customers nearby were now watching closely. Some exchanged amused glances, sensing the underlying insult. Others seemed uncomfortable, but nobody spoke up. Snoop stayed relaxed, but Sarah could see the sharp intelligence behind his calm exterior. He wasn't clueless. He wasn't intimidated. He was letting Michael dig his own grave. Michael, oblivious to the tension rising in the room, continued, I mean, no disrespect, sir. I just wouldn't want you to waste your time. Snoop removed his sunglasses, revealing an expression so cool and unreadable that it made Michael falter for the first time. Tell me something, Snoop said, voice low and measured. That watch right there. He pointed at a platinum diamond-encrusted Rolex in the case. What's it go for? Michael hesitated, then said, That's a one-of-a-kind model. $1.5 million. His smirk returned as he crossed his arms. A bit out of range, I assume. Snoop let the insult sit in the air for a moment. Then, without looking away, he casually reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Yo, he said smoothly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Wire me $2 million. Feeling like buying something nice. The entire store fell silent. Michael's smirk vanished. His eyes widened. Customers turned their heads. Even Mr. Lancaster looked up from his watch selection, suddenly interested. Sarah? She was grinning. Snoop slid his sunglasses back on, leaned on the counter, and spoke calmly. Now, he said, tilting his head, you want to show me the good watches? Or nah? The tension in the store was thick enough to cut with a knife. Snoop's casual but powerful move had left Michael momentarily speechless. The arrogant salesman had spent the last 10 minutes subtly, and not so subtly, belittling him, dismissing him as just another unworthy customer. But now, with just a single phone call, Snoop had flipped the script. Silence spread across the showroom. All eyes were on them. Michael's smirk twitched, trying to hold its shape, but there was a visible shift in his demeanor. The confidence he had just moments ago was cracking. His usual go-to tricks, condescension, dismissal, polite mockery, weren't working this time. He cleared his throat, trying to recover. Well, Mr. Dogg, I didn't mean to imply that you couldn't afford. Snoop held up a hand, cutting him off smoothly. Nah, don't backtrack now, big dog. You was talking real confident a minute ago. A few customers snickered. Even Mr. Lancaster, the wealthy businessman Michael had been doting on, raised an eyebrow. Snoop leaned on the glass counter, tapping it lightly. So, we gon' do this? Or am I still in the wrong store? Michael forced a laugh, but his confidence was hanging by a thread. He glanced at the manager's office, as if silently begging for an escape. But James, the store manager, had just walked in, watching with crossed arms. He wasn't rushing to Michael's rescue. Sarah, the young sales associate, was grinning from ear to ear as she stepped up. Mr. Dogg, I'd be happy to show you our premium collection, she said eagerly, already reaching for the key to the high-end case. Michael instinctively tried to stop her, placing a hand over hers. No, I'll handle this, he muttered. But it was too late. The customers who had ignored the situation before were now fully invested. A man in a tailored navy blue suit whispered to his wife, I think that guy just wired $2 million like it was nothing. Another woman nudged her friend, both of them clearly amused. Michael's really fumbling this one. Mr. Lancaster, the high-profile client Michael had been catering to, suddenly seemed more interested in Snoop. He chuckled. You know, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, I once made the mistake of underestimating a man who didn't look rich enough to be in my circle. That man later became one of my biggest business partners. Michael swallowed hard. Snoop grinned, tilting his head. Lesson learned? Michael was fuming inside. His entire carefully crafted image, his authority in the store, his self-proclaimed ability to spot real buyers, was collapsing in front of everyone. In a desperate attempt to salvage his pride, Michael forced a tight-lipped smile and gestured to Sarah. Go ahead, show him the collection. Snoop didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. Oh, so now you want to sell me a watch? The jab hit Michael hard. The scattered laughter from the customers only made it worse. Sarah, now fully in her element, unlocked the glass case and carefully pulled out the centerpiece of the store. A one-of-a-kind platinum diamond-encrusted Rolex, valued at $1.5 million. The watch sparkled under the bright showroom lights. The energy in the store shifted again. Everyone knew this was no ordinary watch. This was the crown jewel of the store's inventory. Michael tried to recover, straightening his tie. Ah, yes, this is our most exclusive piece, designed for those with the most refined taste. Snoop gave him a slow nod. He reached out and took the watch, examining it closely. He turned to Sarah. How much? Sarah, now glowing with excitement, replied, $1.5 million, sir. Snoop nodded approvingly. Then, without even a second of hesitation, he pulled out his black card and placed it on the counter. I'll take it. The room gasped. Michael visibly flinched. Mr. Lancaster laughed out loud, shaking his head in amusement. Even the customers who had been unsure were now fully engaged. One whispered, Did he just buy that watch like it was a pack of gum? Another muttered, This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Sarah swiped the card, and in less than 30 seconds, the payment was approved. Snoop turned to Sarah, flashing a genuine smile. You the only one in here who treated me right. Appreciate you. Sarah's face lit up, her excitement barely contained. Thank you, Mr. Dogg. It's an honor. Then Snoop turned back to Michael. The once arrogant salesman looked like he wanted to disappear. His face had gone pale, his hands nervously adjusting his tie. Snoop tapped his new Rolex, letting it catch the light. Next time, might want to judge a little less and sell a little more. The room erupted in laughter. Michael? He had nothing left to say. As Snoop turned to leave, the moment felt iconic. A lesson in humility, a public takedown of arrogance, and a masterclass in handling disrespect without even raising his voice. Michael stood frozen behind the counter, his face drained of all confidence. The air in the store had shifted completely. Just moments ago, he had been the one in control, sneering, dismissing, and treating Snoop like he didn't belong. Now the tables had turned so fast that he could barely keep up. The murmurs in the store grew louder. Customers whispered amongst themselves, shaking their heads at the audacity of the situation. Some were amused, some were disgusted. But all of them had witnessed the same thing, Michael's arrogance crumbling in real time. Sarah, still standing beside Snoop, could barely contain her excitement. She knew this moment would be talked about for years. She had watched Michael brush off one of the biggest icons in the world like he was nothing. And now, Snoop had just shut him down in the most effortless way possible. A businessman in a navy blue suit leaned toward his wife. Unbelievable. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Another customer smirked. That guy just lost the biggest commission of his life. Michael swallowed hard. He knew it too. This was the kind of mistake that didn't just sting, it haunted. But the real blow came when Mr. Lancaster, the high-profile businessman Michael had been fawning over all evening, stepped forward. He looked at Snoop, then turned his gaze to Michael, his expression unreadable. Then with an amused chuckle, he said, You know, Michael, I thought you were good at spotting real buyers. Clearly, I was mistaken. The words landed like a slap. Michael's throat tightened. Mr. Lancaster continued, shaking his head. You judged him the second he walked in, didn't you? Thought he wasn't worth your time. But look at you now, standing there like a fool, while he just walked away with the most expensive watch in the store. The other customers nodded in agreement, some even chuckling under their breath. The embarrassment on Michael's face was impossible to hide. Sarah, meanwhile, couldn't stop smiling. She had been on the receiving end of Michael's arrogance for months. Seeing him completely humiliated was something she never thought she'd witness. And then came the final dagger. The businessman turned to Snoop and extended his hand. "Mr. Dogg, I'd be honored to do business with you anytime." Snoop smirked and shook his hand. "Appreciate that, boss." Michael's stomach twisted. He had spent the entire evening bending over backward for the rich, high-status customers. And now the most powerful person in the room wasn't even acknowledging him anymore. The humiliation was suffocating. But it wasn't over yet. One of the younger employees, who had been watching everything unfold, leaned over to a colleague and whispered, "Does he even realize who Snoop Dogg is?" That was when reality truly hit. Michael, still standing dumbfounded, suddenly remembered something. A flash of memory, his teenage years blasting Snoop's music in his car, rapping along to every lyric. His stomach dropped further. He had just insulted one of the most legendary figures in the world. The realization was a slow, painful burn. Michael felt a bead of sweat roll down his temple. He had mocked a global icon. He had treated a man who had more money, connections, and influence than everyone in the store combined, like some nobody off the street. And now, the entire store had seen it happen. Snoop adjusted his new Rolex and turned to Sarah with an approving nod. "Good looking out, man. You knew what was up from the jump." Sarah beamed. "I just believe in treating people with respect, sir." Snoop chuckled. "That's what I'm talking about." And with that, he turned to leave. Michael couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but watch. The moment was etched in history now. Michael had made the mistake of a lifetime, and he knew without a doubt that it would never be forgotten. The air inside the luxury watch boutique was thick with tension. Michael, the arrogant salesman, stood frozen in place, his confidence shattered. The other customers had stopped pretending not to watch. At this point, everyone was openly staring, whispering, waiting to see what Snoop would do next. Snoop Dogg, unfazed by the awkward silence, adjusted his sunglasses and pulled out his phone. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. Then, in the calmest voice imaginable, he said, "Yo, go ahead and wire $2 million to my account real quick. I feel like shopping." The moment those words left his mouth, the store went dead silent. $2 million. Michael's face lost what little color it had left. The businessman, Mr. Lancaster, raised his eyebrows in surprise, clearly impressed. Sarah, the young sales associate, let out a tiny gasp but quickly covered her mouth. Michael, on the other hand, looked like he was on the verge of a full-blown meltdown. Snoop didn't acknowledge him. He simply turned to Sarah, giving her a nod. "Show me the most expensive watch y'all got." Sarah blinked, realizing that she, not Michael, not the manager, not anyone else, was about to make the biggest sale of the night. She swallowed hard, then hurried to the back of the store, where the boutique's most exclusive inventory was kept. Michael finally snapped out of his trance. His entire career had been built on catering to the wealthiest clients, yet he had just ignored, insulted, and dismissed the biggest VIP to ever step foot in the store. His voice came out uneven. Sir, I can personally show you." Snoop didn't even look in his direction. He just raised a hand and said, "Nah, you had your chance, homeboy." The rejection was brutal. Michael's pride took a nosedive straight into the ground. Sarah returned, carefully carrying a $1.5 million diamond-encrusted Rolex inside a sleek, velvet-lined case. She placed it on the counter, her hands slightly shaking, not from fear, but from pure adrenaline. Snoop examined the watch under the store's bright lights. The diamonds glistened, the craftsmanship flawless. With a slight smirk, he nodded. "Yeah, I'll take it." Michael clenched his jaw so hard it looked painful. Sarah, still in disbelief, hesitated. "Sir, would you like to—" Before she could finish, Snoop pulled out his black card and placed it on the counter. "Run it." The store erupted into murmurs. This was not just a purchase. This was a statement. Michael could feel the eyes of every single person in the room drilling into him. His mind raced. How had this happened? How had he let this happen? A few minutes later, the transaction was approved. The receipt printed, crisp and undeniable. The moment Sarah handed Snoop the Rolex, the reality of the situation hit Michael like a freight train. He had just lost a $1.5 million sale. To Sarah, a young associate he had spent months belittling and treating like an amateur. Michael's hands curled into fists. This wasn't supposed to happen. And then, just when he thought it couldn't get worse, Snoop turned back to Sarah and said, "Actually, let's make it 2 watches, one for me, one for you." The room exploded. A collective gasp spread through the store. Michael's mouth fell open. His entire body tensed in disbelief. Sarah? Sarah? Sarah, who had been nothing but kind. Sarah, who had been the only employee in the store to treat Snoop with respect from the start. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. "Sir, what? No, I couldn't." Snoop grinned. "Nah, you good. You the only one who acted right tonight." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she fumbled with the register. She couldn't believe it. She was about to own a $50,000 Rolex. Meanwhile, Michael was drowning in his own regret. The businessman, Mr. Lancaster, let out a low chuckle. He patted Michael on the shoulder and said, "Hope you learned something tonight, son." Michael couldn't respond. His career, his pride, his reputation, gone, just like that. As Snoop secured both watches, he finally turned toward Michael. Just for a second. With a smooth grin, he said, "Guess you picked the wrong customer to play with, huh?" And just like that, he walked out, leaving Michael standing there, humiliated beyond repair. Michael stood frozen, his body stiff as a statue, his mind racing. The weight of his mistake pressed down on him like a collapsing building. He had just lost a $1.5 million sale. No. $1.55 million, including the extra watch Snoop bought for Sarah. And worse, he had made a complete fool of himself in front of the entire store. The air in the boutique felt different now, thick, charged with unspoken judgment. Whispers filled the space like a rising tide. Did that really just happen? Snoop Dogg just shut him down. He lost the biggest sale of the year. What an idiot. Michael's throat felt dry. He turned to the store manager, James, who had come rushing in after hearing the commotion. James, a sharp-dressed man with years of experience in luxury sales, scanned the room quickly. He could feel the energy shift, the excited buzz of the other customers, the satisfied smirk on the businessman's face, and the pure shock in Sarah's eyes as she clutched the receipt for her brand-new Rolex. And then there was Michael, visibly sweating, jaw clenched, panic written all over his face. James's expression darkened. "Michael, what the hell just happened?" Michael stammered. He couldn't even form a sentence. The businessman, Mr. Lancaster, let out a chuckle. "I'll tell you what happened, James. Your employee here just judged the wrong man, and it cost him." James's eyes flicked back to Michael. "Is that true?" Michael's pulse pounded. His instincts told him to lie, make an excuse, shift the blame. But there was no excuse for this. He had ignored Snoop. He had mocked him. He had disrespected him. And then when he finally realized who he was dealing with, it was too late. "James, I didn't think he was serious." James pinched the bridge of his nose. "You didn't think? That's your defense? You didn't think?" His voice was sharp, his patience non-existent. Michael's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't fair. How was he supposed to know? But then he saw Sarah. She stood there, still in shock, holding the Rolex Snoop had just bought her. And that's when the truth hit him like a punch to the gut. Sarah had done nothing special. She hadn't kissed up to Snoop. She hadn't treated him differently because he was famous. She had simply treated him with respect, like she would any other customer. And because of that, she was now walking away with a $50,000 Rolex on her wrist. Michael's stomach churned. James exhaled, then turned to Sarah. "Is this true? You were the only one who helped him?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. He just asked to see the best watch we had. That's it." James shook his head in disgust. "Unbelievable." Michael felt sick. Then James dropped the hammer. "Michael, you're done here." Michael's head snapped up. "Wait, what?" James didn't flinch. "You embarrassed this store. You lost $1 million sale. And you disrespected a customer, one of the biggest names in the world, no less. He crossed his arms. What would you do if you were in my position? Michael's face turned red. Come on, James. This is ridiculous. James raised an eyebrow. Really? You think firing you is worse than what you did? Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing left to say. The businessman chuckled again, patting Michael's shoulder one last time. Son, let this be a lesson. Respect isn't about who you think has money. It's about how you treat people. Period. Michael barely heard him. His career in luxury sales was over. As he turned to leave, he stole one last glance at Sarah. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't rubbing it in. She just looked relieved. Michael swallowed hard. He had ruined everything, all because of his own arrogance. As he stepped outside, the reality settled in. Snoop Dogg had walked in, flipped the script, and walked out a winner. And Michael? Michael had played himself. The store was still buzzing. Customers whispered, employees exchanged stunned glances, and social media notifications were already blowing up. Everyone had just witnessed a masterclass in humility, delivered by none other than Snoop Dogg. As Snoop casually inspected his new $1.5 million diamond Rolex, he turned to Sarah, the young sales associate, who had treated him with respect from the start. He studied her for a moment, then smiled. How long you been working here, little lady? Sarah swallowed. Hard. Almost 2 years, sir. Snoop nodded. You like it? She hesitated, glancing at the store manager, James, who was still fuming over Michael's colossal failure. I do, but customers like you don't come in every day. Snoop chuckled. Well, maybe they should. James cleared his throat, stepping forward. Mr. Broadus, on behalf of the store, I sincerely apologize for... Snoop held up a hand, cutting him off. Ain't about the store, man. It's about how people treat each other. Then he turned back to Sarah. All right, let's make it 2. Sarah blinked. I'm sorry, what? Snoop grinned. 2 watches. One for me, one for you. The room froze. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Sir, I can't accept that. Snoop chuckled. Oh, you gonna accept it. 'Cause when you treat people right, the universe treats you right back. She looked at James, who gave her an approving nod. Her hands trembled as she reached for the $50,000 Rolex Snoop had picked for her. Her eyes welled with tears. I don't know what to say. Snoop smiled. Say thank you and keep being you. The businessman, Mr. Lancaster, clapped his hands together. Now that's class. Meanwhile, Michael stood frozen near the entrance, watching everything unfold with hollow eyes. The same man he had mocked and dismissed had just dropped nearly $2 million in minutes. And now the junior sales associate he had ignored. She was walking away with a watch worth more than his entire commission for the year. James, the manager, turned to Michael one last time. This is what respect gets you. And you? You threw it away. Michael clenched his fists, jaw tightening, but he had no argument left to make. Snoop, completely unbothered, tapped his new watch, then looked at Sarah. Looks good on you. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly and nodded. Thank you so much. Snoop nodded back. Now don't let nobody tell you who's worth your time. You feel me? Sarah smiled, finally understanding the full weight of the moment. This wasn't just about a watch. This was a lesson in respect, in kindness, in recognizing real worth beyond material things. As Snoop turned toward the exit, James stepped forward. Mr. Broadus, we'd love to have you back anytime. As a VIP, Snoop laughed. Y'all should have had me as a VIP before I dropped $2 million, man. James's face turned red. Point taken. As Snoop reached the door, he turned back one last time. The store had changed. Not physically, but in energy. The lesson had sunk in. And as for Michael, he was already gone. The ultimate mic drop. Snoop Dogg had entered a place where he wasn't respected and walked out owning the whole moment. By the time Snoop Dogg's car pulled away from the luxury watch store, the internet had already taken over. A young influencer in the store had captured the entire moment, from the snobby salesman's arrogance to Snoop's jaw-dropping $2 million flex. Within minutes, the video was uploaded with the caption, Snoop Dogg just schooled a racist salesman and blessed a hardworking employee. ICON. The video spread like wildfire. Twitter exploded. Respect like Snoop started trending worldwide. This is why Snoop Dogg is a legend, not just for the music, but for his heart. Man walked in disrespected, walked out owning the whole store. That's boss energy. Salesman really fumbled a $1.5 million sale and his job. Couldn't be me. Instagram and TikTok flooded with clips, reactions, and breakdowns of the interaction. Celebrity accounts started sharing the post. LeBron James commented, "Stay humble or get humbled." Meanwhile, back at the store, Sarah's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from friends, strangers, even local news stations flooded in. One DM caught her off guard. A message from Snoop Dogg himself. "Hold your head up. You deserve that W." Tears welled in her eyes. She had simply treated someone with respect, and it had changed her life overnight. By morning, major media outlets had picked up the story. CNN. Snoop Dogg turns tables on disrespectful salesman in viral video. Forbes. How one luxury store lost $1 million sale in 30 seconds. The watch store's Google reviews plummeted. Thousands of people left one-star ratings, dragging the business for its biased treatment. Hope y'all train your employees better, cause this was embarrassing. Might want to rename the store L's Only Boutique after this. Meanwhile, Sarah's inbox filled with job offers. Competing high-end boutiques reached out, offering her a position. One company even offered to double her salary. And Michael? Store management issued a public statement announcing that Michael had been terminated effective immediately. But the damage was already done. Michael, now infamous online, tried to defend himself on Twitter. "I was just doing my job. This whole thing is blown out of proportion." Wrong move. The internet clapped back instantly. "Bro, your job was to sell, not to judge. You failed at both. Ain't nobody buying that weak excuse, just like nobody bought that watch from you." Michael deleted his account an hour later. A reporter caught up with Snoop at an event the next day. "Mr. Broadus, did you expect your watch store visit to go viral?" Snoop smirked. "Nah, I just expected people to learn something." "And what's the lesson?" He adjusted his Rolex and said, "You never know who's walking through that door, so treat everybody with respect. Period." Mic drop. The world was still buzzing about what had happened at the luxury watch store. News anchors debated it. Social media kept the story alive. Memes flooded the internet. Michael's face frozen in shock, Snoop's calm smirk, the moment Sarah got her surprise Rolex. But for Snoop Dogg, it was just another day. A few days later, Snoop sat in a sleek black chair on a popular talk show. Across from him, the host smiled, clearly eager to bring up the viral moment. "All right, Snoop," the host began, chuckling. "The internet has crowned you the king of teaching life lessons. What was going through your mind when that salesman disrespected you?" Snoop leaned back, his signature cool demeanor unshaken. "Man, I've been black my whole life. This ain't new." The audience laughed, but the truth in his words was heavy. "See, people judge off appearances. You ain't wearing a suit, they think you broke. You talk a certain way, they think you dumb. But I don't trip, 'cause at the end of the day, they the ones missing out." The host nodded, intrigued. "So you knew what you were gonna do?" Snoop grinned. "I let 'em play theyselves. Gave 'em a chance to do right. They didn't, so I made 'em learn." The host showed a clip of the viral video, the moment where Michael ignored Snoop, the way he smirked, dismissing him, then the look on his face when Snoop dropped the $10 million bombshell. The audience reacted again, reliving the moment. The host shook his head. "Man, that was brutal." Snoop laughed. "Nah, that was necessary." The host leaned in. "If you could say one thing to that salesman, what would it be?" Snoop didn't hesitate. "Hope you learned, homie, 'cause life gon' keep teaching you till you get it." The conversation shifted. "This was bigger than just a watch, wasn't it?" the host asked. Snoop nodded. "Way bigger. It's about how we see people, how we treat them." He pointed at the camera. "Look, money don't make you real. Clothes don't make you smart. Status don't make you better than nobody." The audience clapped. Snoop continued. Respect is the real currency, and if you broke in that, you got nothing. So, what happened to that salesman? Snoop smirked. Last I heard, he unemployed. Laughter filled the studio. As the show ended, the camera zoomed in on Snoop's wrist. The same diamond-studded Rolex from that fateful night glistened under the studio lights. A reminder, a statement, a lesson learned, and just like that, Snoop had won. Again. The luxury watch store had no choice but to change. After the viral disaster, the backlash was swift and brutal. Thousands of negative reviews, customers canceling appointments, and news articles dragging their name through the mud. The once exclusive boutique now had a reputation for discrimination. It was simple. Fix it or go under. Management moved fast. They issued a public apology, pledging a new commitment to fairness, respect, and customer service. But an apology wasn't enough. Real action followed. Every employee, from sales staff to executives, underwent anti-bias training. Policies changed. Every customer would be treated with the same courtesy, no exceptions. And the biggest change? Sarah, the only salesperson who treated Snoop Dogg with respect, was promoted to lead sales associate. The store had a lot to prove. And on Sarah's very first day in her new role, Snoop Dogg walked through the doors. This time, there was no hesitation, no judgment, no second-guessing. James, the store manager, personally greeted him at the entrance. "Welcome back, Mr. Broadus." Snoop smirked. "Different vibe this time." Sarah stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Good to see you again, sir." Snoop nodded. "Heard you got a promotion. I knew you had it in you." She blushed slightly but stood tall. "Thanks to you." Unlike before, customers didn't gawk or whisper. The staff didn't assume. Everyone in the store knew what happened last time, and no one wanted to make that mistake again. The energy had shifted. Respect had replaced arrogance. The final blow to Michael. As Snoop strolled through the store, he turned to James, hands in his pockets. "One last thing. That fool Michael. Where he at?" James sighed. "Gone. Fired immediately." Snoop let out a deep chuckle. "Smart move." Michael had been the store's top seller, but no amount of sales could undo the damage he caused. He disrespected the wrong customer and paid the price. And Snoop wasn't done yet. He glanced at Sarah. "Got anything new for me?" Excited, she led him to the store's rarest timepieces, speaking with confidence. No longer she had earned her place, and everyone in the store knew it. As Snoop prepared to leave, cameras flashed outside. The press had been following the story since the viral video, waiting for his final say. Reporters called out, "Snoop, you made history here. Any last words?" He adjusted his brand-new diamond-studded Rolex, smirked, and said, "Time tells the truth, baby." With that, he strolled out of the store, leaving behind more than just a viral moment. He left behind a lesson in respect that no one would forget.